Awesome. Welcome back to part 2 of the episode with Candies. This is an amazing episode. First of all, I've never done a part 2 with anybody. I had to do a part 2 with you because this writing is suspenseful. I had the opportunity. She shared the draft with me, shared the writing with me, let me get my eyes on it so I can really ask some in-depth questions. Normally, when an author comes on here, you get sampled highlights, overviews, themes, but I never get the full text, so I can't really dive in. Rosie let me have the thing. I appreciate it. I have to purchase the real book because you would never do that to anybody. But it is an interesting and very good, great read. I encourage you all out there to support her. It's a line of questioning. You know what it is. We got to start this thing off like we do every time. This is It Is What It Is podcast. If you want to keep seeing amazing content, you got to do 2 things. You got to connect with me on Instagram at CVMK33 and on YouTube at CV_K. I feel like I've said that at least 1,000,000 times. Where all great content is seen, heard, and felt. And with that being said, Rosie, how are you doing today?
I am having a great day. It's Thursday, almost to the end of the week.
Yeah. It's Friday Eve.
Absolutely.
That's how you look at it, man. Thursday might be the coolest day of the week because tomorrow is Friday, and the next day, like sometimes you get to Saturday, you're like, oh, Sunday, that means Monday is around the corner. Thursday really is that day. Absolutely. And on a great Thursday like today, we're going to talk about this book. We're going to get into it because you have written some very transparent, and I do mean transparent things I don't even know if I would possess the boldness to discuss at length. So before we get into it, I want to first of all appreciate your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing your story. I think it's going to bless so many souls out there who have had similar experiences or are going through their own tests and trauma and need a voice, a person of confidence, something that they can provide and get motivation from. And I believe this is for them. I want to start with the daddy issues chapter. I try to dissect being a strong Black woman. There's a lot there, but I want to get into, to me, when you start really becoming, because that's kind of more like a prelude. I mean, obviously it becomes before, but it's really a prelude to daddy issues, right? Like I always say, strength is the inversion of weakness, right? So I want to start with the daddy issues chapter. I have a quote. I wrote it down here. In the quote, you said, I have the one memory of trying to protect my mother. I vividly remember the ear-splitting smack to the face that I got. That's a lot, right? A very painful memory, I'm sure even writing that, having to relive it was something. And it's crazy when I think about having the confidence to reveal past hurt and trauma. You have to deal with the fact that A, it happened. You can't ignore it. B, you might not be over it as much as you think. And then sharing that truth with others who are not invested, comes with great cost. What gave you the confidence to even reveal that truth? Because that's not that's not something you just brush over. What gave you the confidence?
I guess the biggest thing is that was a real defining moment in my life. My brothers had moved away, and I felt like I was not protected anymore. Like as long as they were around, I knew that I felt safe, right? Well, when they left, it left me very vulnerable. And, I'm next oldest in line. I took on that, let me protect my younger siblings, let me protect my mom now that my brothers are gone. Sure. And in that moment, it's a very, very vivid description of what happened, but it defined me in a sense. In that moment, I decided I'm never going to be weak as a woman, and I'm never going to let anybody treat me any kind of way, or, you know, decide that they're going to do whatever to me. Like in that moment, I think I was maybe like 12, but I was making decisions in that moment after that smack. It was like, oh no, it's certain things that is never going to happen to me.
Sure.
And I decided, and it took me a long time to forgive my mom. Um, it was it was a long time, but we, you know, we talked about it, we got
Sure.
through it,
Sure.
forgiveness was there. But I made some decisions about her too without really knowing, you know, what strength and weakness was.
How did you process? So you said you were 12. I wondered how old you were when it occurred. You mentioned that it came via your stepfather. How did you process? Like, you're 12 years old. You know, like I remember being 12. 12 is kind of one of those ages where it's like I'm growing out of a kid, and you know, I'm about to become a teenager. I'm trying to be grown, but I don't know what, you know, this nuance is, but I still am all full kid. And you get hit with this revelation, and now you have to have an opinion about it and about others, right? What has that discussion been like? You said it changed your opinion about your mom. Like what changed, and then what does that discussion lead to?
So part of it is that all of us experience trauma, and normally when we think about trauma, it stems back to what? Childhood, right? So to really be able to dissect it, you have to go back to not just your trauma, but your parents' trauma. So you have to pull from there for you to be able to then navigate and have the tools you need to kind of process your trauma. So there are things that, you know, happen probably with her that allow certain things to happen. And then in my life, certain things happen. And then I'm like, oh shoot, I allowed that to happen because of defining moments in childhood. So in that moment, it was more about me deciding to be strong than, I guess, then really allow myself to feel, to have emotions. It was just like I have to be strong because what I thought she was weak. So I was just gonna be the opposite. So whatever I felt she was, I was just gonna be the opposite. Without really, I don't even know if I was really processing. I just knew what I didn't want. So me having a conversation with my mom was more of like, I need you to forgive me, because in that moment I held a grudge like for years. It was, you know, I didn't really let her in with certain, you know, things that was happening in my life. You know, she would kind of find out after the fact and things like that. I knew I was doing it. I don't know if she really knew why, right? But that moment really kind of made a lot of things happen for me in my thinking, in my reacting to my behavior that moment. Because I guess when your dad isn't present,
Sure.
and then your brothers who is like the next best thing, so when both parties are gone, it leaves you very vulnerable. And then you kind of look to what may be a impossible strength or a made up strength, but that's what you turn to in those moments, so that you completely are opposite of what you think you don't want to ever be.
I like it. I like it. You know, in processing, sometimes it doesn't hit you till like later. Um, you mentioned the twins. You mentioned the loss of child. I had to bury the baby of a woman who was lost during birth, and it shook me. I didn't realize it. It shook me. You know, like I had to commit the body to the ground, and you know, I've been to a million funerals. Every funeral is different. Crying is natural, but you know, I'm not really saddened. I was like when I got to my car and I realized what I had done and I saw how small the coffin was, like it rattled my mind. Like I was uneasy about it, right? And then you mentioned getting pregnant, the things you had to do to get it. And then you mentioned, thinking that your water broke and then taking the bath, right? You thought you were going to go to the hospital, smell like urine. And then you mentioned, the blame, like, did I wait too long and all this? I could not write that without a couple things: time and a bottle of sangria. How did you in all honesty, how did you write? I mean, that couldn't be one sitting, right? Like, how did you sit there and say, I'm gonna actually put this to paper?
So it was one of those things where I've been able to, I guess, talk to several women that has experienced the loss of a child, not being able to get pregnant, um, and having babies in the NICU. So it's been kind of this journey after it happened to me. It seems like friends, family, it just started happening where I've had to relive it several times, right? Because if one of my friends had a baby, her baby was in the NICU, she wants to know, okay, at this stage, what happens? And then what happens? So I had to go back to be there for her, kind of give her the steps she needed to walk through the process. I was already kind of over the hill.
Sure.
It's one of those things you learn to live with. You're never gonna get over it. You lose a baby, you're never you can have more kids, all that can happen, it never goes away, right? But in those moments, I had to decide, like, are you going to just live this moment and it becomes just for you, or are you going to help someone else get to where you are in your healing process? So yeah, it was definitely a lot of conversations, a lot of therapy, and a lot of like reflection and bringing it to, like, to pass, like, oh my God, let me just think about what all happened in that moment leading up to their birth. So yeah, it took a couple took a couple settings, couple conversations, definitely lots of therapy, to be able to write that. But I knew that there are so many women who, like, I know women, but then there are so many that I don't know that have experienced those very things. And the truth is, we knew, like, water breaks when you're pregnant, but you really don't really have an idea because nobody really has ever explained what that is. Like, nobody says, like, it keeps running. Like, you just think your water breaks, boom, but nobody says, like, okay, there's a trail of water that follows you all the way to the room for you to give birth. And well, what does it smell like? It's all these things that you really, like, I didn't know until that moment. So
Does it I feel like, because you spent a lot of time on that particular chapter, one of the things I always say, any true fan of reading, any true person that likes literature understands that every author has a specific style. Their style is what makes the thing works. Preachers do it all the time, right? But they don't do it outside the Bible. With your style, I started noticing how much time you spent, particularly from first chapter to the third chapter, the things you really wanted to focus on, and then the things you kind of wanted to speed up, right? That portion you spent the most time, from the medication that the doctor gave you, to being excited, to dealing with the loss of a child. And you really created a detailed narrative around it, right? And a detailed account. And then you started postings, you started writing scriptures of comfort and things of that nature. But what are you trying to relay, other than the point of just exposing it? Like, because to give that much detail, right? Like that was a defining moment, like something in you switched, because from that you move into why they don't matter. And it's almost like a domino effect. It couldn't like be this just was a separate incident. It was like this and then this, like this set it off. And at that point, you know, I'll get to that later. What was that domino effect for you?
So, you know, we live life and we're always wondering like what's the worst thing that could happen, right?
Sure.
And what was really defined for me, and that is probably why I spent a lot of time on that chapter, is because the worst thing, when you think about some of the worst things that can happen, losing a child is one of those things, right? But once you are not like taken out, like it doesn't take you out, and you live it and you heal from it, you're never going to get over it, but you cope. And it's almost like you become invincible. Like I can do anything now because the worst thing that could happen to a person has happened and it didn't kill me. You know, like I didn't die. I didn't just lay in the bed. I had to, you know, get through some tough days. But now being on the other side, I feel like I can do anything. And in those moments, you know, I guess it is a great transition to why they don't matter, is because life is going to happen to you and things are going to happen that, you know, are good, bad, indifferent. But then you realize what really matters in life. And some of the things we spend a lot of time on, a lot of things that we give a lot of energy to, at the end of the day, they don't really matter. You know, and in those moments where you needed healing, a shoulder, support, encouragement, you know, those two are the people that mattered, right? But when you make decisions on the other side, the people who you think may have something to say, when you realize like they're not in your circle
Sure.
and they're not your support system, you then realize, hey, they really don't matter. Like they're
Mhm.
not pouring into my life. They just may have an opinion about something that they really don't know, you know,
Sure.
that much about, because they really don't know you. So then you have to get into like, well, how do they have that much power? You know, if they're not really in your circle.
Right.
So there's like it's amazing how much power these unnamed people have over people. And once you've been through stuff that I've been through, you just
Mhm.
realize like I'm not giving them that kind of energy or that kind of power over my life. I'm going to, which is the hashtag, I'm going to rewrite my story.
Yeah.
And whether people like it or not, it's my story. So, yeah.
I like it. I like it. Which leads to me the best chapter. Who I was hoping. This is my only push. I wanted more details. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted the smoke on this chapter. So why don't they matter? I have a quote here, and this is why, because I feel like it's a story within a story. It's more than a chapter. It really is its own story. You're right. Many of us highly regard pastors and first ladies so much that we fall, or that we fail to accept the notion that they are flawed. You mentioned the executive leadership of the church being flawed, but you never mentioned the flaws of the executive leadership, right? You say that they're flawed, and it's like, yes, finally. What are they flawed with? You know, like, or is flaws as big? I get it. Love will make you protect even when things are over. That is totally the responsible thing to do. But I'm petty. No, I'm playing. But I want to know, I want to know, because I'm sure this is more common than not. When we have individuals in leadership that stay together because of optics more than because of truth, as noble as it is, it's deceiving, right? And because we can't discuss it, right? You can't even discuss it. Nobody, I feel like, gets healed from it. What should you've been a first lady? What should, first of all, as a first lady, what should be the message of a pastor, of a co-pastor, of a married to a pastor of a church or a religious organization? What should that be? First question. Second question is, therefore, what should that be an expectation, or should that even be a desire? And before you answer that,
but to be a first lady,
yes, because I think what's happening is people, and I'm not you, because you don't allude to it, and I know you. I know this is not your truth, but I think with this generation, people like clout. They like it. They like all of it and what comes with it, regardless of the truth of the situation. And I feel like it's a very dangerous slope we're heading down, right? So to start off with, why didn't you mention the flaws?
I think because at the end of the day, regardless of title, talent, gifts, we're still human. And although we're spiritual beings, we're still human. And I think a lot of times that expectation that we put on pastor, first lady, the perfectness that they should possess, when they show up, they're on all the time. And really, that is a flaw. There's no way you can really be on like that all the time, right? But it's who you present, when you arrive at church, because there's a huge spotlight on you. So, they looking at what you have on. They look at when you wipe your nose. They look at how you care for your children. They're watching your facial expressions when the pastor's up preaching. If you're not standing, then it's, ooh, did they get into it before they came to church? Or, ooh, is she mad at him today? I mean, there's so much pressure there, right? So anybody that kind of desires to be a first lady, they definitely don't know the pressure that comes with it, right? Like, yeah, it's the big hats and the sitting on the front row, right? And you got people at your beck and call, but the flip side of that is it's the emotional toll, the pressure of wanting, even though they're not asking you to be perfect, but it is some kind of perfection that you put on yourself, that I have to present a certain way, and I can't say that, or I better not share this, or I may not do that. Let me stand up. You may have wore some shoes that are like, ooh, these shoes are not the standing shoes. But if you don't stand for your husband that's preaching, the first lady ain't standing up. Like, forget the fact that she's still human. She may be tired. She may have a job. Like, she's been up with these kids all night. None of that matters, because they want people to be on. And I just think it's kind of an unreasonable expectation that, when you're in that position, it's like trying to climb a mountain that's like smooth on one side. That's hard to do.
No, I believe it. People think, I give it. I said, I don't know how my grandmother did. I mean, shout out to Calvert and Marshall, because being a first lady is more than a notion. You talk about, the unfair expectation of it. When, like, what can't you do? Right? Like, what are the do's and don'ts? Like, can you, listen to Beyonce? Can you, I mean, what like could what could my wife do that you could not do, that they would look at April and be like, oh, well, that's just April. They look at Rose and like, well, yeah, but that's first lady, right? You know, like, what are some of those things?
Well, I guess it's kind of weird because I've always had to me, I've always had this expectation on me since I was a small kid. Like I talk about that in the first chapter of being Superwoman. Like
Yeah.
I remember babysitting people's kids at like 10 years old, where like now I have an 8-year-old and in 2 years I would never let him watch anybody's kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's always been like this kind of like expectation on me. And again, what I did as like first lady was different from like what I did with my circle. So you have to have some kind of outlet, right? Um I didn't wear pants. Like I'm in the South, and before getting married I wore pants. But I do remember growing up because my great grandmother was like the holy one. So we didn't wear pants for a span of, as during my childhood. And then when I got married, I didn't wear pants. But now, I got my pants. I got my pants back on, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think that there has to be an outlet. There's no way you can be on like that all the time. And then you need a place that's safe. So you need a place where you can, in a sense, let your hair down, joke, laugh, dance, whatever it is.
Right.
You have to have that. Like, yes, we love God and we trust him and we have faith and we speak in tongues. But there has to be a place where you can feel safe, where you can share and be vulnerable, because church isn't really that place for if you're in a leadership like that. That's not the place where you can go and just lay on the altar and just receive from God, because they're looking at you like, is she okay? But there are moments,
Right.
when you're like, I just want to go to church and I don't want y'all looking at me. I just need to get something from God, but a lot of that had to happen at home or at a place where nobody knows you, a church where it's like, we don't know who that is. And you can feel free to kind of worship and receive.
Yeah, see, I bring my flaws with me. So I'm like, so Jay-Z comes with me everywhere. I got the Holy Spirit and I got, Jigga Man. So, what was that talk? Because this is where I was trying to get to. It was never really like you mentioned an exit strategy, and then bam, but I'm like, that's what I wanted, and that's what I want to uncover. That had to be hard, right? Like, this isn't ABC Scandal. This isn't a TV show. Like, exiting, that's a nuance, right? Like, how did you just deal with it? How did you be like, whatever for me, this is what I need. I know the residual effect and I know what you all think, but this is what I need to do. Tell me about that exit strategy.
It was really a conversation with God and kind of making a decision. Listen, it's either go be me come with you or it's going to be me have to go.
Gotcha.
And I was real with God just like that. Like I am, in the book I talk about waking up dead. That was one of those things where I had to, in that moment, the exit strategy was I got to live. Like I knew that there were things that God had already spoken that hadn't been fulfilled yet, which means that I need to be here to be able to fulfill it. But that meant that I couldn't do it really in this dead state.
Hmm.
So I had to make a decision first to live, and then whatever living meant, I had to do it. So it was probably one of the toughest decisions of my life. Um and now I know that they don't matter, right? What everybody
Yeah.
had to say, because it's my life, right?
Yeah.
But it took, you know, it wasn't a decision that was like all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I kind of put the tools in place for me to be okay.
Yeah.
That meant I needed to get some counseling. I needed to have these conversations. I needed a safe space where I could share and be okay with, okay, the next day. And then all right, leading up to, this actual exit, my therapist, she's amazing. Like, we walk through it all, and it was the pros, the cons, how you go deal with this, how we go deal with that. We did the work, but it was necessary for my own life. And it wasn't about, like, we talk about the flaws and all of that. This really was, um and you can kind of, when you read the book, you can kind of see that this book isn't about anybody else but me.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Listen, it was strategic, because I really wanted people to see that a lot of times, you can play the blame game, you can do all of that, but at the end of the day, it's accountability for decisions that you made, that at the end you got to stand for yourself. It's not me and all these other people, it's you
Right.
by yourself.
Right.
So you have to have conversations with God to really allow him to not, in a sense, give you the okay, but let you know that he still got you
Mhm.
regardless of the decision that you're about to make. I needed to know that he wasn't going to punish me or, you
Mhm.
know, throw me away, like most people do. I was like, okay, God, now we still together, right? Even though I'm
Ah,
about to
you still
make this
got me.
decision, right? Like, you still got my back because I'm gonna need you right through here. But
Ah,
it was, it really was important to seek out the help that you need to
yeah.
really get that stuff out of you, because a lot of times you don't realize that you've kept so much stuff inside and you don't have an outlet. You don't really want to tell your friends, like, hey, I done had some thoughts of just like, I don't want to be here anymore, because then it's like, she crazy or what? But
Yeah.
when you're in those sessions and you're really working on healing, then it's about that. Like, it's a real no judgment zone. And I know a lot of people may not, like, nah, I don't go to no therapy. I don't need no counseling. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
But you get a chance to unload all this stuff that you have inside of you. It really is just a conversation, but it's a conversation with somebody that you don't have to see every day, because
Right.
if you tell your friend or people you see, then it's like, I wonder if they thinking about what I told them. But this,
Ah,
but this is one of those, like, when it's a therapist, you get to go and see them when you want to see them, and when you don't want to see them, you don't have to. But then you know that it's a safe space and it's no judgment. We should be able to do this in church, but the
sure.
truth is, the confidentiality in church is just not there. The minute
No.
people get some information, it's out. And we do so much damage to people by doing that. Like, can y'all keep secrets like Jesus? Like, we want to be like Jesus, but we want to keep the secrets.
Nah.
So,
They do
yeah.
you like Judas, boy. Next thing you know, you like, hey, who are these guys?
Yeah, who's coming from me? Yeah.
Right. So my last question, Rosie, I appreciate this so much. And then we'll, get into where they can get the book, how they can support you. You talked about in the book, you worked on yourself. You talked about the counseling and the therapy. You talked about, going back to get your other degree. You talked about the promotion on the job. You have leveled up, I think is where I'm trying to get to post all of this. No matter what kind of transpires, is there like anxiety And what I mean by that, like, even in times of success, and I've noticed for myself, I'll question me and be like, is this real? You know what I'm saying? Like I've had, especially recently, I don't know why this is going on, but like, is this real? Like, am I really at this point in life? Is that a real thing? Like, cause you've done this, you moved on, upgraded, you're an author, you're becoming this mogul. And it's like, is there a not maybe a fear with it all, this newness, right? How do you deal with that?
Well, it was definitely fear. Um it was definitely anxiety. I did a lot of like journaling in the beginning, just to be able to go back and see like, oh wow, I'm not in that place anymore. Like, look how much progress I've made. But any decision, that's big like that,
Yeah.
there's always like the fear that you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you've been in this place for a while and now you're doing something different. So you don't know what's going to become of that. But it really was um reactivating that relationship with God to really know that he had me, because then it was just me. Like, I need to know that if I don't have anybody else, God, I got you.
Right.
And that is where I really found the strength, because I allowed myself to be weak so that he would allow his strength to, give me the courage to keep going. But oh yeah, the anxiety. And I know this is the thing: if you see anybody that's great or anybody that's successful, you have to know that there is a story behind it. Like,
Yeah.
people make it look easy, and I know people like, oh, you were able to do this and you accomplished that. But the truth is, the story to where like,
Right.
nobody just fumbles and fall on success. That is not what happens. It
Not
just
most of
doesn't.
us.
Yeah, like, there's always a story to get you where you need to be, but that also builds character. It builds character, integrity, and all the things that you need to be successful. You kind of get it during the journey. The easy part is being successful, but the
Right.
journey to get there is where most of the depth is built.
Perfect. Perfect. With that being said, my guest has been amazing. Y'all go support Rosie. Rosie, where can they buy the book, follow you, and support what you're doing?
So they can go to candiesrose.com to purchase the book. Also, Amazon has the book. It's available, as well as my social media is, Candies Rose Bryant. My Instagram is Roses Are Red 7.7. And the book launch will be September the 17th in Chicago, and then there will be another in Houston. But I'm excited to see all the people, and we'll have a Q&A session uh, just to see what people's thoughts were about the book and everything. And I'm hoping that for I guess the biggest thing that I'm hoping is that somebody is able to rewrite whatever situation, issue, whatever they're in, that they, after reading this book, have a defining moment to
Yeah.
say, I'm going to do things different. And that's probably the biggest thing that I'm hoping that happens, because being in a dead state is not productive. But a lot of people feel like they're in this by themselves, and you have to know that there's so many people that share more similarities than not. And if they can do it, if I can do it, then you can do it. You just have to overcome the fear.
Awesome. Y'all go support, buy the book, connect with her on IG, visit the website, come to the book Launch. If you're in Chicago, the Midwest, comes to Chicago location, you're down in the South, check her out in Houston. It is a fantastic read. I appreciate my guest. And until next time, thanks.
Thank you.